today. With that, I'll introduce our next panel. We're going to shift out of sustainability and things for a bit and talk about the diversity of the industry. And I think the presentations and the speakers we've had today really speak to the diversity of this industry that we've had, from the imagery that Casey described of sort of the logger in the flannel shirt and the sort of the gruff men that used to be there, and to the industry the way we are, to where we are now with modern technologies and just a great diversity of individuals and cultures and where we are today. And with that, I'll first introduce Paige Edelstein, who is the Regional Business Operational Manager for Boise Cascade here in the West Coast. And I've known Paige for a while now. She is our past president. She was on our board. She has moved off our board now this week, and we're thankful for her service there as well. Paige, which I did not know, Paige was from Hendersonville, North Carolina until recently, and she has done a great job of hiding her Southern accent from us. But she got her BS there at...
Unlike you, Justin.
That is for sure. I don't think I'll ever be able to get rid of it. So she got her BS there at Virginia Tech. She then came out to Oregon State to get her master's in wood science, and is now, of course, working there at Boise Cascade. And Mr. Robert Jones Jr., he is from Boise Cascade as well, and he is their Diversity and Inclusion Director. And it says here, you've worked in a wide range of companies like Owen Corning's, Capital One, Sam's Clubs. That in itself is pretty diverse. That is fantastic. Can't wait to hear your stories and history of working in those different industries and maybe how they compare to ours and the struggles we face. He is a native Floridian, Florida Memorial University, a bachelor's degree in business administration there, and has completed a leadership program at the Southern Methodist University, and is now 2020, through the pandemic, became a certified life coach. That sounds like a COVID project. Maybe not, but that is fantastic to hear. And finally, Erin Nuxol, I think I pronounced that correctly. If not, that's okay. I apologize for that. She joined Boise Cascade in Kettle Falls in 1983 as a log buyer, and then has transitioned into human resources in '92 and various leadership roles and positions within the organization, and now is on sort of a global and private companies within Boise, and then joined Boise Cascade back in 2016. Is now the Senior Vice President of HR. She's from Gonzaga University, a bachelor's in forest management, Washington State University. She's just a fantastic leader for Boise Cascade. And with that, I'll turn it over to you three to introduce us and talk to us about diversity and inclusion within our forest products industry. Thank you.
Thanks, Justin. Appreciate the introduction. You stole some of our thunder, but that's okay. We'll go more in depth. So yeah, like Justin said, we're the Boise Cascade panel, a little bit different from the other keynotes that we've had throughout the week, but really glad to kind of conclude the virtual international conference with today's panel on diversity and inclusion. I love all the talks today and everything that we've had throughout the international conference. I really appreciate you all adjusting to our virtual format and still being here and interactive with us. And that's really what we want today's panel to be, is an interactive discussion. We'll have a kind of 15 minutes or so of an introduction of who we are, and I've got some questions that I'll ask Erin and Robert, but the rest of the time is really meant for questions from the audience. So please keep that in mind. Write down your questions, type them in the chat. I've got the chat box open, so I'll be able to see towards the end what questions you have. But really, this is just as much us learning from you all as it is kind of sharing our experiences. So we really encourage that. Ask us the hard questions or ask us the difficult ones. That's what this is about, is learning and growing together. So with that, we will go ahead and get started. Oh, you know what, one more thing. So with your questions, to incentivize you, we have, oh, you can't see it with my virtual background here. We have 5 copies of this book, Erin's got hers. I know Robert's got his somewhere.
I always keep
Called
it.
What If I Say the Wrong Thing? So we will mail you a copy of that book if you are one of the first 5 to ask a question. Jennifer Whitlow is going to keep track of that for us. Thank you, Jennifer. So either, like I said, type your question in, or towards the end, if you're brave enough, you can unmute and ask a question. We want this to be as informal and interactive as we can. So with that, I'm going to give a quick bio, even though I know Justin already did a great introduction, and I've been fortunate enough to meet most of you either in person in the past or through our virtual format this week. But my name's Paige Edelstein. I'm with Boise Cascade. Like Justin said, I'm the Region Business Optimization Manager for our Western Oregon region. I'm located here in Medford, Oregon. So like Casey talked about with the wildfires, unfortunately, we got to experience those very close to home down here in Medford last summer. So we'll keep our fingers crossed and be prepared for this summer. I did my undergraduate degree at Virginia Tech in wood science and forest products, then came out to Oregon State to get my master's degree also in wood science, and then started working for Boise right after that. So I've been here almost 5 years. I started as an industrial engineer. I'll put a little plug in. We have an industrial engineer position open right now in Medford. I put that posting on our virtual booth. So if you're at all interested, please go check that out. I now manage the industrial engineers and all of our business optimization projects. So that's related to process improvement in our 5 facilities down here. A fun fact about diversity and inclusion before we get going: when I graduated undergraduate at Virginia Tech, there were 27 of us in the wood science department, and there were 2 females. I was one of 2. And the other female went off in the packaging department. So she was going to work in different packaging components for the makeup industry, which is really cool. So I was in the majority of my classes, I was the only woman, and that kind of sparked my passion for diversity and inclusion, specifically within this industry. So really proud to be here today with Erin and Robert and share some about what Boise Cascade's doing and what the industry is doing as a whole. And like I said, please bring in those questions so we can all learn from each other. So with that, I'll hand it over to Erin and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Great, thank you, Paige. And thank you for the invitation for Boise Cascade and for us to tell a little of our story. I think it's just really interesting to see that. And I have to tell you, the energy that Casey had about Seneca was just really interesting for me, because that passion comes through as we go through, and many of your speeches and talks this week have done that. So a little bit similar to Paige's story is that I did join Boise Cascade in 1983. That sounds like a long time ago, Justin, when you introduced me. It did sound like a long time ago, but it was a similar story. I have very much of a natural resource background. I'd call it from farm to forest to garden, from the perspective that I raised in Wyoming, one of 5 girls in a farm life that loved the natural resources, loved the background of working with my dad and my mom, my sisters on that farm, and looked for an opportunity to apply that natural resource in more of a college setting. And so I chose forestry. And if you know anything about Wyoming, is that we have a lot of range management, but to be able to study forest management, you had to go to the state of Wyoming. And so I came out to Washington State University and got my BS in forest management at a time that a lot of changes was going on in the forest. And I think you can reflect on that. Started with Boise Cascade right out of college. And much of my story is the part of being able to just be able to do the work that I wanted to do. I love the outside. I like to see how things grow and how management, whether it's in a garden or a farm or a forest, that you can help that. You can actually use the products and then also see that natural regeneration. So that's important to me in both the natural resources, and then when I changed to human resources, it's not much different. You have to nurture it, you have to feed it and grow it, and create that passion. So I started out as a log buyer. Actually, even farther down the chain than that, I started out as a temporary forester for Boise Cascade, planting trees, laying out timber markets, and then moved into the company and spent 23 years before leaving. But that part was really the part that says that there's opportunity for women, there's opportunity for people who wanted to work through the company. But I guess when I came back to Boise Cascade in 2016, my passion is really to promote and to actually look at diversity and inclusion with new eyes, and to make a difference as we look at the past 25 years and what we maybe not have done as much in that arena as we could. So there's a new passion in me to help see that where we can bring more people together. I love the diversity on the screen. As I look at that, I think, gosh, the diversity of thought, experience, backgrounds, and geographies, topics that you can see when you just talk about the forest products industry. So when I look at that, that's my kind of passion today, is to make a difference. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk with this group and help you think about different ways that you can influence it, both individually and as your companies, as your academic studies, those kind of things. How do we help each other be successful in this industry? So thank you again for having us, and I will hand it over to Robert, who's helping us on that journey right now with Boise Cascade. So Robert, thanks for joining us, and I'll hand it to you.
Thank you, Erin. Thank you, Paige. And thank you again, as Erin said, for this wonderful opportunity to engage. We're excited to be here on behalf of Boise Cascade. A little bit about me. I won't be very long because, again, the introduction was awesome. For me, diversity and inclusion has been a big part of my life in general. My career has been very diverse. I've worked for Fortune 500 companies. I've worked for very small organizations. And one thing is consistent. People want to be seen, heard, and valued, right? People want to be respected, and people want to be treated with courtesy. And that's what this work is all about. Was having a conversation this morning with a leader at our organization, and they're out visiting a client today. And we talked about the fact that even as we interact and engage with our clients, diversity and inclusion is an important part of that interaction. It's about professional interaction. It's about, again, treating people not even the way you want to be treated, but treating people the way they want and they deserve to be treated, by embracing their differences, right? Exploring and being curious about, who they are. Being from Miami, Florida, it's an international city, right? It's a place that has an unlimited number of diverse people and backgrounds and cultures, foods, experiences, and opportunities. And so I'm very fortunate to have grown up in an environment that did not afford me the opportunity to not embrace diversity, right? That would have been so counter to who I am. And so I'm just thankful, and I'm looking forward to our conversation today and learning more about you, and hopefully, again, sharing some tips, best practices that we can all lean and lead into when it comes to creating a more diverse and inclusive environment. So Paige, back to you.
All right, great. Thank you both. So let's just go ahead and jump into some of the questions I have prepared for you. I see Maureen, who is a mentor for me, has already put a question in the chat. So good to see that, Maureen. I'm going to start this one with Erin. So what do you think are the biggest challenges that we have already overcome in the diversity, equity, and inclusion journey to date? And I'll talk specifically on this one for Boise Cascade as a company. And then Robert, I'll hand it to you. And I'd like for you to talk more about just the industry and your experience, across different companies.
Great, thank you, Paige. Yeah, I think one of the biggest challenges for us was just getting started. And so I think oftentimes we were hesitant if we can't do it perfect, or if you've had some failures or less than positive experiences, I think people tend to stop and not get started. So I think this last re-energizing part for us to really focus on diversity, inclusion, and equity is the fact that we're started, and that we will keep on the path, and we might make mistakes, but we're going to keep moving forward. So I think getting started was important for Boise Cascade. And then I think the second part is really the activity outside externally in our communities, in our society today, that helps us understand that this is important work that we need to do, both internally, personally, organizationally, and in our communities. So I think the challenges have been how to get started, and I think once you overcome, just get started, and then you start to look at, there's lots of resources across the communities, and there's other people in the same places and same struggles, that as you start to make these networks and and reach out to others to learn more, that you help them learn, and there's a momentum that happens. So I think getting started, looking for resources and learning, recognizing it's going to be difficult work, but that your commitment is there, and you know that you have others that can help you along the way and help our associates. So for us, I think that's a little bit of resilience to keep going.
Yeah, no, that's great. Thank you. Do you feel, Erin, you're at the executive level of our company, when you started having those conversations, and you're obviously very passionate about this journey that we're on, was that conversation hard to kick off? I mean, I know now we've got a structure, we're established as a company, we've got our mission and vision for our DE&I journey, but in the early stages, can you speak a little bit about what that was like in your conversations?
Yes, so one of the things that I can tell you is, as long as I've worked at Boise Cascade, I felt that there was opportunities, and I appreciate your note in the chat, Maureen, about there's opportunities, and when do people take those opportunities and why they don't. So I've always felt that Boise Cascade has been a very welcoming company, and that there's opportunities, but you have to kind of take those. But when we look back, we hadn't made any more progress. So we are about 80% men in our organization, and we are about 70% white in our organization. So when we look at that, that hasn't really changed over the years. So when you think, why isn't the change happening? So I think when you ask the opportunities, I think there has been opportunities, but how do we create it more and open our door and be more inclusive in that piece? So I think that's the progress has, that's where we focused 5 years ago when I came back to the company, and the CEO asked me if we would start to work on it, but it took us a couple of years to figure out how to get that momentum started. So we're starting to see good work now, but as I look back, it just takes time, energy, and focus. And now that we have the commitment at the top, even at that commitment, you have to continue to work on it every day, because you think you don't get it and just say, well, check the box, we're done. It's a commitment every day, from the top of the organization, where people are watching your behaviors, all the way down through where you can get more people engaged. So we have a very active steering committee right now across the organization, 15 associates actively working on that, and then trying to roll this and cascade it out across our company. But you just don't get it done. It actually is such work that keeps going. And for me, it was really coming back to a CEO who was committed to it. And then we had a change in CEOs. As Tom retired and now we have Nate, you have to make sure that consistency is in there every day, and with that leadership team. So for me, it's really starting at the top and supporting your leaders to be supportive of it, and then build the network across your organization and bring others along. And there's ups and downs, I will just tell you, but I feel that we're making that progress, and it's worth the energy.
Good. Yeah, thank you. I love what you say about it's an everyday focused effort. It's not a check it off on Monday and you're done for the week. And I know I've heard Robert say this, it's a journey, and you have to stay focused. So thank you. So Robert, what about you? What do you see as the biggest challenges or obstacles that we've already overcome?
Yeah, I think the challenges are going to be ongoing, right? It is to keep people inspired, one, and to hold people accountable too, right? That's something that we don't talk a lot about and enough about, because with diversity and inclusion, it could be difficult to say, how do you hold someone accountable, right, for something that is an intangible? And the way I like to think about it is, if you have core values like we do at Boise Cascade, respect, integrity, safety, and excellence, those are your tenets of inclusion in your organization. And if you don't hold the CEO down to the most frontline of persons accountable to those core values, you won't make progress. And so when I think about what we have overcome, but yet still that has to be overcome industry and corporately across the world, is really being consistent, as Erin said it, with living our values. Because respect is defined the same in any book that you read it. Any dictionary that you pull up and look up the word respect, it is the same. However, the way you, Paige, and or Erin exhibit and expect respect can be uniquely different. So understanding your teammates' values, what's important to them, spending that time and really caring, about who they are as an individual, I think that's the biggest obstacle and challenge that leaders, particularly executives, have to slow down, because everybody's running a business, right? Listen, if you're an executive, if you're in the C-suite, you're leading a large team in most cases. But ultimately, we're all here for people, right? We are human beings doing human work that is building great companies like us at Boise Cascade. And it's one day at a time, as you said it, one win at a time, one learning at a time, one peak, right? We have peaks, and then we have to go back down to the valley to get to the next peak. So I think it is the resilience, as Erin said it is the commitment, and it is the courage, right? To acknowledge when we don't get it right, learn from that, and then apply that knowledge to be better next time.
Yeah, no, that's great. And that actually leads into my next question. I'll go ahead and hand this one to you, Robert, which is, what's been the most successful, I don't know if I want to call it method, but technique or thing that you've learned from your experiences in really connecting with people about why diversity, equity, and inclusion is so important, not only to the business and the company and the industry, but to each individual and to society. What's the most successful thing you found in your experiences?
Well, for me, it's a heart issue. Diversity, equity, and inclusion is really a heart issue. And so when I've connected with people at a heart level, at a human level, helping people to recognize that we all have a different and diverse journey, being curious about other people's journeys. And then when they're allowed to tell their story, and then you can connect a dot to your story, right? You then begin to see, wow, we are all diverse. We're working towards being inclusive and embracing and welcoming, right, of one another's story. And so for me, over the last 20 years of a career that I've built, I learned very early on, and I'll share this quick story. When I was a branch manager in financial services, I had a teller, Kim. One day, Kim came up to me and said, "Hey, Robert, you have great energy, and we're doing well, but you seem like a robot, right? You come in here and you're always positive and you're always this, but we don't feel like we know you." Right? That's what I took from that conversation, is people want to connect to your heart before you can capture their mind. And once you've connected with people's heart, they will follow you, and you will then allow them to lead you. So I think for me, it's about the simplest of forms of connectivity, recognizing that human beings don't want to be invisible. People want to be seen. Again, they want to be heard, and they want to be valued. And so when we can do that in everyday interactions, not just in the workplace, in our homes, with our spouses, with our family, with our friends, that's the same thing and the same sort of commitment and consistency and recognition of heart we can bring into the workplace. And we'll see this organic evolution of inclusion, right? And then that influences policies, right, that lead to equity. So for me, I've learned that when we connect to people's hearts, you find the simplest and most common of denominators. You can build trust, which opens people up to following as well as leading on any DE&I journey.
Yeah, I love how you connected that back to, the inclusion part of the journey, because there's steps we can take, especially when we think about recruiting and retention and outreach and all of that related to diversity and making sure that we've got procedures in place. But I think really when the rubber meets the road, it's that inclusion bit. So what are we doing in the company to really, be inclusive with all of those groups together? And I think, like you said, it's about connecting with each individual, from the heart. So Erin, what about you? What have you found is the most successful?
Yeah, so for me, I'm an extrovert, and I like people, and I'm kind of out there. So for me, it's actually trying to listen first, and maybe that connects exactly to what Robert said. But when I find myself not listening or asking the questions, curious questions about each other, and letting others speak about themselves, so that if you can create that environment where people can come in and you actually have that question for connection. I guess I'm answering it very similar to both of you, but I think it's that, for me, being conscious about listening and letting people have that open space to share that, and recognizing that there's many points of view. We had an instructor once talk about, there's another point of view. Well, there's many other points of views is really what the answer is it's not just 2 points. It's not yours and mine, but it's really ours. And when you listen and open it up for more people to share a point of view. First of all, you get a better understanding of the problem if you're problem solving, and you also get a better understanding of just how people see things through different lenses. And so for me personally, and I think that's, we're looking at some ways to actually have listening sessions across our company, because during COVID, we were a little bit disconnected. A lot of remote workers, a lot of distributed workers, even though many of our manufacturing locations, we kept working, but we separated people. And I think when we start to come back to work and when we can come back together, that ability to connect, to listen, and to reach out to each other is very, very important. But it's recognizing there's more than one point of view. In fact, there's many points of view, and having room in your workplace and your home and your heart for all those points of view, and to really recognize that that all matters.
Yeah, that's great. I love that. That's at the definition, I guess, of diversity, equity, and inclusion, is recognizing that there's not one path forward, there's many. I have one more quick question, and then I want to leave some time, and I'll get to Maureen's question. Please don't be shy, enter in your questions in the chat. But my last one is really one that I'm curious about, because I've come across this in the workplace. And Erin, I'll start with you. What have you done when maybe you're in a situation where you're in a meeting, or you're, in the lunchroom in a work environment, and you hear something that somebody says, and maybe they say it on purpose, or maybe it's just a saying that they've always said, but it's a little inappropriate, and you're not sure how to react to it. Sometimes I get caught off guard, and I it takes me a while to process. How have you dealt with that in the workplace? And you obviously have this passion to make the changes you want to see, but it's hard sometimes when you're, caught in the situation in the moment. So how have you overcome that?
Well, as we said, it's everyday work in progress. So sometimes it's a remark that I immediately will respond to. There's certain limits that I will just speak up for two reasons. One, personally, and then I am an HR person. So from my perspective, I not only carry my responsibilities, but I carry for the company. So if it's something that I absolutely need to respond to in the moment, is perfect. But there's times when it does catch you off guard, and you walk away, and as you reflect on things, you actually go, wow, that there was a second meaning, or what did they really mean by that? And I think taking the time to first reflect and then address it with the person personally is what I've tried to do. So speaking up sometimes is speaking up in the moment, and sometimes speaking up is coming back to it and just clarifying what people meant, and then sharing with them that maybe that it was offensive to others. Did you recognize it? And I will tell you, I have evaluated many phrases that my parents may have said in our home, and meant nothing by them. But as I reflect as an older person and look back, they might have had more of an impact to some individuals than others. And so my dad would not hurt a person. I know he wouldn't, but was his phrases always the best? And so I've actually quit using a few phrases that I know might be offensive, and I think others have to reflect on that as well. So sometimes people don't even recognize that they use a phrase that can be very offensive, or to some individuals. So I think it's important not to. Sometimes it's important not to speak up right at the moment, but to catch back and let them understand what their phrase might mean, or how it might be received by others. So, gosh, I think I'm learning better to speak up and stand up and show up, so people know that it's important by all leaders of our company that some things are absolutely not okay. But also sometimes there's times when it does catch you off guard, but it's perfectly okay to circle back with that person and share that conversation and keep their dignity, keep their respectfully, but also recognize that you're sharing a different point of view. And I think when you can do that in your culture, then I think you really started to make the progress you want to make, as you can have the conversation safely, and that you're actually all working towards the same goal, to be respectful and more inclusive. So I think it does situational, but I know we've all been caught off guard when you couldn't believe what you heard. But now I think in our world, we're coming back and having those conversations. So, but probably a lot of walk around that long answer, but I think there's different ways to respond.
Yeah, no, and I appreciate that, because you always want to have the right thing to say and be in the right mindset, and not become just emotional about it and not be disrespectful to the other person too, because like you said, they may be saying something because it's passed down from, their parents, and they don't even realize. So it's more about educating. But I appreciate that you say, sometimes you have to just come back and reflect, because, I've been in those situations. I'm like, darn, like, why didn't I say something? But, and actually that kind of leads into our book, which, is what if I say the wrong thing? Sometimes there's times when you need to come back and address the situation later. So what about you, Robert?
Yeah, I think one of the most important tools and strategies when it comes to driving diversity, equity, and inclusion is creating a psychologically safe environment, right? In our industry, physical safety is priority number one. But on our journey here at Boise Cascade, we've embraced the psychological safety is also priority number one. It's where 1 + 1 = 3. And it means that we recognize that words matter. We recognize that people's perspectives matter. We may not always agree with them. We may not, because we don't have their experience, right? So I can't agree with something if I don't have the exact experience, but I can accept your perspective as your perspective. So in terms of how I address situations, I mean, even recently as this week, I heard there was some comments made to me that I didn't take, I took offensively, because they were comments that were, quite frankly, lacking of respect. And I think it was a matter of maybe just emotion, right? I think there was maybe some other things behind it, but it was offensive, right? But what I always choose to do in the moment is, let's have a conversation about it, or let's be clear. I want to make sure I'm clear. I heard what you said and I can understand where it came from. But there are going to be times where there is that impasse, that because that is Paige's experience, that's Paige's perspective. That's Erin's experience, that's Erin's perspective. But I do believe that you have to address, particularly as leaders, when you see something, you have to say something. You don't have to blast someone in public, but you can pull, Robert to the side and say, hey, Robert, you made this comment. I heard it. I'm not sure what your intent was, but it didn't land well, right? And then you're giving that person an opportunity you're putting a mirror in front of that person saying, I'm not trying to harm you. I'm actually trying to help you by bringing this to your attention. And so let's talk about it. So for me, Paige, it happens often for a number of reasons. As a Black man, as a Black gay man, right? And as a man from Miami, right? There's so many things. Paige, there are things that people may, have unconscious bias towards you about. Erin, there's things about her that people may have unconscious bias about. But the goal is to enlighten people. And again, through curiosity and maintaining a commitment to civility, respect, integrity, safety, and excellence, we can push through anything. I think most people are forgiving if we do, as even Erin said, come back, circle back, have the integrity to circle back and say, you know what, I may have missed the mark here, but I want you to know I care about you enough to acknowledge it. People are forgiving, right? We are forgiving beings. We're made that way. That's why I mentioned the heart. And so for anyone on the line that's pursuing a diversity and inclusion journey, know that it starts first with that curiosity and allowing people to tell their stories. Like we've done, we've rolled out a diversity and inclusion spotlight series where we're telling different people's stories and people are excited about it. And, it creates engagement. Right? We've also started a Building a Bigger Table conversation series where our CEO has shared why this work is as important to him as well as to our organization. And we have more to come. So again, through conversation, we can create psychological safety, the latitude, right? As well as the courage to take risks and confront, as well as listen, as Erin put it, which I love, and learn. So for me, that's been my experience and my perspective, Paige.
Yeah, and I love that, Robert. I'm gonna have to use your phrase of, when somebody says something and you're just not quite sure, asking them like, help me understand what you meant by that comment, and then that may also bring to light, before you even say anything, they may say, oh my gosh, I didn't realize that was something that could have been seen offensively, or maybe they don't see that, but that gives you the chance to share your perspective on it. So I like that tip. I'll have to use that one. So I know we've only got a couple more minutes left, but I do want to get to the chat. And like I said, please don't be shy. Enter in your questions. Maureen, we'll talk about yours, and I'm going to shoot this one over to Erin. what is the retention rate of women within Boise Cascade? And do you know why they leave, when and if they do leave? You know, what's the reasoning behind some of that, maybe in an exit interview?
Yeah, so I think, thank you for the question. And I think we've done some study around it. We haven't done enough. So we have some of our turnover is in the first 2 years of our company, and that's for men and women. We just see an awful lot of turnover in the first 2 years. And I think that's why we need to work on the inclusive piece of diversity and inclusion, is because you can hire people, but you have to have that piece for people to stay. So we know that early retention is really important for us and for people to understand our industry and for us to understand the diversity of our teams. We also see women work up through the company, and they kind of plateau at about a director level. So some leave just periodically through other reasons, probably mostly personal reasons. And again, we don't dive into that on whether that's family issues or whatever through that whole part, because we don't really capture that information, but personal reasons. And then we just don't see the representation in the top of our company. And so for us, we think there's something right in that area that sort of says, what is keeping women from going to the top of the company? And we look at it both from women and people of color or in our organization as well. What's keeping them from moving up? And that's the work we need to do today. I don't have a number for you, Maureen, on what the percentages is, but we see them leaving for personal reasons. And that's a pretty big glob of stuff. What's in that box? And we need to break that out. So that's the work we have, is that we continue to maintain our percentages, but we aren't gaining, and we're not seeing in the uppermost levels of our organization. And that's important work to do. You want the diversity at all levels.
Yeah, no, good. That's a good, good representation of what we see. And I know too, Erin, that you and the rest of the organization are working on some of the, policies around the work schedules, and how we can even think about like some of the structure of the company and the jobs, and how that creates a more inclusive work environment, not only from what we're doing on a conversation level, but how we're allowing people and their flexibility that they may need, at all different levels. So
may I just respond to that, because it's so important. I think this past year has been really difficult, working from home and working remotely and working differently. But one thing, if you look for the silver lining in each of those things, we've really learned a lot about how we can use technology, just like your virtual session here today. And then also the fact that we can trust that our associates are getting the work done. And so we have to think about if we can have that flexibility where people can modify their schedule and accommodate their work and life together as one kind of more in harmony. So we're looking at that. What did we learn during the COVID pandemic? How can we apply it going forward? And to your point is specifically, how can we be as flexible as possible? And I do think that's been part of the reason women have left our organization. There's been times, as I had my family, and other times when it's hard to balance everything. And if your workplace can help you work through those ups and downs of your life with flexibility, you can work through the ups and downs of your company. So I think that's the shared relationship that we're looking for. And we learned a good lesson this past year of how much work we can do collectively and distributed. And if we can come back and make sure that we help implement some of those. So we are on our journey for flexible work policies that I think will help us in some of this other aspects of our business.
Yes, good. Thank you. This next one I'm going to hand over to Robert. So inclusivity has not always been important to our industry. I'm sure lots of us can share war stories. So when did inclusivity movement start, and what do you think is driving it?
Well, I'm going to expand it to outside of our industry and really expand it to the workforce, right? We're at a time and place where we have 5 generations in the workforce, from traditionalists, right, to Gen Zers, Xers, and millennials. I forget all of the different changing names, but we have a vast array of people working in the workforce. And studies have shown through learnings and a lot of mistakes, right, not embracing those different generations in the right way causes that diminishment in the workforce, that diminishment of productivity, the lack of applicants, and the talent pool changes. And so inclusion has always been important, but because of where we are in the world, in the workforce, there's just so many things and the role that technology plays in our companies nowadays, it's so critical. And our millennials, people that are graduating college today, they have a different need than maybe their parents or their parents' parents or their parents' parents' parents, which may still be in the workforce. So inclusion has always been on the table. It's just the definition and the expansion of inclusion is now what people are focusing on. It's not just about gender. It's not just about race. You have ability differences and abilities, right? We have orientation. We have a plethora of things that now help us to understand there is no one way. And again, as you and Erin have said, there are multiple perspectives, multiple experiences, and the workforce is now more conscious than ever that we have to be accommodating through our programs, our policies, like for us, our total rewards. It's amazing the things that we're doing to create that inclusive experience for all of our associates with our benefits. Because it's not just, again, one dimensional. Companies don't just say we need to recruit more women and we're going to go recruit more women. We have to create this culture and the space where women can thrive and women can grow. And as Erin put it, move beyond the director level into, the VP and the SVP, and the CEO levels, right? So I think the world is recognizing that the dynamics of the workforce have evolved, and we have to actually get out in front of it where we've been trying to keep up with it in order to be the most attractive organization and recruit, let alone retain, the best, the brightest. And as we like to think of them here at Boise Cascade, inviting those folks to the table so that we can leverage and grow together.
Yeah, good. No, I like how you talk about, the generations and how our workforce today is so different than, what we've seen maybe in previous generations, and how, that's kind of shaping the work that we're doing as well. And, it's exciting to see that. And it's one of those where we've got a long road ahead, like we've talked about many times, but it doesn't mean that it's something that should make us stop at all. I'm going to pick on Joseph, put him on the spot. Joseph, do you want to unmute and ask your question? I can definitely read it out loud, but it's been answered somewhat already.
Yeah, this is Joseph. Yeah, I think Erin kind of answered part of this question as I was typing it. But yeah, it's basically just, life happens. There's times in people's lives when they need to dial back for various reasons. And, it's probably in their best interest maybe to dial back from work sometimes a little bit. But of course, the company needs that worker to make everything, to make money and, keep making profits. I guess the question is, how can you balance the immediate needs of the company versus the immediate needs of the employee, with the idea that longer range it's probably beneficial for the company to be able to accommodate the immediate needs, so that employee can come back when they're ready in full capacity.
So Paige, may I just answer just a little bit more on that? Because I think there's a couple of things in your question, Joseph, and certainly the way we're approaching flexible work today is I think more inclusive than it was even a year ago, but certainly more than when I started in the 80s. The other thing that's really working towards that balance is the shortage of workers. As you all know, there's less and less there's less baby boomers. There may be 5 generations in the workplace, but there are fewer baby boomers. And as we look forward, we're really having a tight talent market, and certainly tight talent market around some professions. So for us, I think the balance is tipped a little bit towards the employee to ask and to suggest what needs to be done in the workplace. And so I think employers are going to be more willing to do some adjustments and ways to come back to connect employee to employer. We've kind of broken that connection in prior years, with other ways, so we weren't looking for people to stay with us forever. But I think we are going to continue to look at ways to attract and retain our associates and have them feel a part of that community of our company and the work that we do. So the purpose we have, it's important that we have a strong purpose. And for Boise Cascade, it's that we bring people together for a strong purpose, to build homes and communities that last and the test of time. But from our perspective, it's really making sure you have purpose, making sure that you hear your associates and then respond to that. And I think you'll see that even more with more employers as you go forward. Yeah,
that's great. Thank you for that. And the adaptiveness that, you know, we have to have in life and work in society. I mean, that I think especially this past year has, like you said, shown us where we need to be more adaptive. So I know we're wrapping up towards the end of our session, Justin.
Did you
So
see that? Yeah, Justin has a question.
Oh.
Yeah, that I just had my hand up. Yeah,
Oh,
I do have a question though for the panel, and we are starting to wrap up here in a little bit. And you just touched on it, Erin. I was curious about two things, and really two thoughts is, I run a smaller organization here with Evergreen. We're a mid-sized consulting engineering firm. And the pressure on talent right now is extremely high. And so there's two parts to this question, I guess. Maybe the first thought is I think of it in terms of our recruiting programs and our attraction. How do we bring people into our business? And I think over time, I've recognized that I can't always go to the same college, the same university, because that doesn't necessarily draw in the same, well, it does draw the same individuals and things from that same spot. And so I have to be more diverse to draw more inclusion from different sources. So that's something that, you know, as an organizational leader here that I've been aware of, and how to recruit differently and things, and not always just going back to that same spot and branching out and being more diverse in that. And so the first part is what are some ideas around attracting people into that, right? So Robert, maybe it's to you because of your diverse industry, right? From a bank teller, you know, presumably my image is, you know, a shirt and tie, into sawmill and plywood, and that's a vastly different experience. And how do we as an industry attract bright young people like yourself into this industry? You know, obviously we have a reputation of the gruff sawmills we spoke about earlier, but what are some things we can do to attract and bring in more people and individuals into this organization? So maybe you could speak on what drew you into this industry. And then the second part of this whole question is, once we have them, how do we retain them via our diversity and inclusion methodology? So.
Yeah. So great question. Very, very good question. And here's the thing with me, as an example, as you shared, I have a very diverse background. For me, I say yes more than anything. I live a life based on building experiences and meeting people and creating, you know, a legacy that I can look back on and say, I did this, I did that. I affected and impacted the lives of thousands of people, right? That's for me, my big, bold purpose. I have a big, bold purpose in life. And that's to inspire, impact, and positively change the lives of 1 million people around the world. So I say yes to opportunities that will allow me to do that. The same is true for talent. Every person has a unique purpose and vision that they want for their career, most importantly for their lives, right? And so when we're thinking about attracting great talent, people are drawn to a mission. They're drawn to leaders that are inspiring, that are encouraging, that are uplifting, that believe in a bigger future than we have today, right? So that's the first thing, is have a compelling story for your applicants that they are drawn to. The industry is neutral, right? Again, I've worked at Owens Corning learning selling shingles, right? And now I'm on the very front end of it. And I believe we at Boise Cascade have the gift of being on the front end of the American dream, which is home ownership, right? Like, I really believe we play a significant role in that. But it was a part of my onboarding journey. I was inspired to want to join. So first and foremost, have a compelling vision for your organization that makes applicants excited about being a part of your company. That's first and foremost. Second, hold yourselves and your teams, particularly your executive leadership teams, accountable to living that vision and your core values. Again, our core values of integrity, safety, respect, and excellence guide every decision we make and every interaction that we have. So live your core values, and kind of tying into the third piece is hold people accountable and recognize when they get it right. When people aren't living the values, pull them to the side, right? Hey, this doesn't feel right, or this doesn't look like our values. But when people do live recognize, highlight, put spotlight from the most entry-level associate to the most senior level associate, right? Recognize people who are on the journey. And that way, and I'll wrap it up with this, your biggest recruiter, your best recruiter is an engaged, inspired, and included employee. So So that's my journey, my experience, and my 3.5 recommendations on things that you can do, we can do to attract great talent, to have a culture that they can sit in and thrive in, and then be able to attract more talent because they're so happy they rave, they become raving fans. So those are my thoughts. Erin, Paige.
Yeah, I do want to build off that a little bit because we've talked about this in our subcommittee of recruiting and retention as part of the overall diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. And something that I think probably the two biggest things that I've taken from my lessons learned on the committee is, recognizing your unconscious bias. So making sure that, you're going out and you're actively, the tangible bit is going out to those different universities or to those different organizations to recruit, but then recognizing that you have unconscious bias. Everybody does. So what is that, and how can you, change your actions based on, trying to prevent the unconscious bias that you already have? And then the second thing that we've talked a lot about is, and we talked about this a little bit earlier in the international convention, is, company culture and fit. And, where your culture is, or maybe where it has been, is probably very different than where you want it to be in the next 10 to 15 years. So trying to focus on that when you're, talking with prospective, candidates is, yeah, this is our culture and our company today. Here's our history, but this is where we want to be in the 10 and 15 year time frame, so that you can make sure that also, matches up well with the candidate. So Erin, I'll let you go, and then I think we have a couple minutes and we'll wrap up.
Perfect. Well, I will just tell you, I would say that everybody's a recruiter. So when we opened the conference today and Paige announced that we had an opening, I am delighted to see that, because I think everybody has to become a recruiter all the time. And it's a matter of where you are or when. It's not just when that one person is doing it on a college campus. It's seeing Paige and, gosh, I could do what Paige is doing, or seeing Robert and say, gosh, I could do it, and I think that you make those connections all the time. But everybody in our company needs to be a recruiter, so that we continue to recruit across the U.S. and internationally. We don't have that many international locations, but that we have that ability to actually be a recruiter. So from my perspective, that's changed a little bit. And then also go to different universities, because you have to change something to get change. So, but I appreciated both of them being recruiters today for us, because I think when people look at a panel like this opportunity for us, we all love Boise Cascade and have had a good relationship here, and we hope others can do it as well. So I think be a recruiter every day.
Yeah, no, that's good. I see we've got one other question, but I think we're out of time, but I will put your name down for our book. So I really appreciate Erin and Robert. I know you have crazy busy schedules. I really appreciate you joining on the call today. And this is really special for me to have the Forest Products Society, which is close to heart, and Boise Cascade joining together with the topic of diversity and inclusion. So with that, Justin, we'll conclude and hand it back to you.
Thank you so much, Paige, and thank you, Boise Cascade panel, Robert and Erin. It's just a fantastic discussion, and I think it's just so timely. Not only just from where we are as an industry, and in my, I started in the 90s working in a plywood plant, pulling veneer, and to where I am now running a small mid-sized engineering firm, and the industry has changed, and we need to tell that story, and we need to continue this journey and continue to talk about it. I think it's just a fantastic topic, and so glad we could share it with everyone today. I do want to thank all of our other guests as well. Casey and Alicia, you guys have been fantastic, and love the circular economy, and then seeing it lived out through Seneca. It's just a fantastic story. I want to join you guys now in a little bit the technical sessions will get started, and there will be some other virtual appointments to allow some of these young professionals to sign up. And Chris, I don't know if we still have any openings, but hope to see you through the rest of the conference. And thanks again, panel, and look forward to talking to you soon. Bye now.